Hello everybody, my name is Amol Patel. You're watching the Smoking Hot Coffee Show. I'm in Los Angeles. Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. we talk to startup founders. I'm joined with...
Hey guys, I'm Jeff Pelton down here in San Diego.
And today we have another amazing interview with Justin Miller from Mapbox.com. Mapbox is a really an anomaly in open source in that they make money. It's an example of how open source can actually build a company. They have, I think, 30-ish people headcount so far, and they're doing great. Jeff, tell us more about Mapbox.
Yeah, Mapbox is really great. They use open source tools, so they build upon open source mapping data from OpenStreetMaps, and then they have a huge repository, or on GitHub they have a ton of source code. So they open source just about all the stuff they can, all the front end mapping, JavaScript and the iOS SDK and everything that you need to get going with mapping quickly and easily on your site. So they have incredible clients like Foursquare and I think like USA Today, Evernote, Hitmonk, NPR, it looks like on their homepage, where these people need really highly customized map solutions that aren't available elsewhere. And certainly they couldn't build on their own, I don't think, with their own in-house teams.
So a lot of business people, look at open source and figure out, well, this is really cool. Yeah, this is great, free for all. But how am I going to pay people? How am I going to grow a company? How do I make money? How do I survive? And these are issues that every startup has to face when they're trying to build a freemium model, let's say. And in this case, they found it quite by accident. I mean, they started putting this stuff up on GitHub, and all of a sudden, I'm sure they started getting requests from these media outlets, other startups saying, "Hey, we need this to be stable. We need to be able to make this big. Can you help us?" And there it is. Can you help us? Can you make it stable? Can you provide services? That's the business model for open source. And I have to tell you, Jeff, these guys are super rare. I'm so glad we got them on today. And Jeff, tell me as an open source advocate, like what do you think of the Mapbox?
Well, and as a product manager, I'm just totally in love because as a product and a web product, what they offer is kind of unmatched. We spent some time talking about what Google offers, which is they were kind of first to market with all the web developers trying to mash things up, and they kind of got burned. The developers got burned a little bit, or the entrepreneurs, and we talk about that. And so I'm showing on screen, some of the different use cases that they've highlighted on their website. But there's a lot of great use cases that couldn't use Google Maps if under ideal conditions. They're making things possible that are a little bit outside of the broad consumer mapping we see from Google and Yahoo and Apple. And
And one of the key differentiators versus like a Google Maps is that you can design this map how you want. A lot of developers / designers, a lot of product managers, people that come up with these ideas, they want to control the look. They want to take the standard maps that you're getting from Google's API, and they want to redesign it and design it in the way they want to see fit. And you're not going to get that kind of level of control with Google's API. And so, as Jeff is scrolling through some of these examples, there are some designs here that are completely different from one another. Like I'm looking at this 1940s New York. It's completely different from the little snitch one down below that. I mean, they're so different, and you're not going to get this kind of variety. You're not going to get this kind of diversity. You're not going to get this kind of control from Google's API. And so
exactly, and as a developer, it's not even just design control. I don't think there's a lot of functional control that goes in there as well. We talk about things like the ability to offline maps and some other things that really you just could not do, I don't think, with the other competitors.
Yeah, and so let me tell you,
and a lot of that is because of the open nature of it, like you mentioned earlier. It just really opens it up so that there's just so few restrictions. It's just so much more compelling as a developer.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, as a consumer, I love all the technology Google has to offer. They're really great. They deserve their stock price and where they're at. But we need competition, and we need to support companies like like this one that's building on OpenStreetMaps. Even though OpenStreetMaps is completely open, they have an actual commercial business model on top of that, and I think it's really great that they're doing that. We talked a lot about that. Talked a lot about the differences between open source and commercial. We talked about the subtle nuances there. We talked about privacy. We briefly touched on the whole NSA thing that's going on. We talked about the future of mapping and all that kind of thing. We even talked about crazy use cases like mapping Mars, for example. All of this diversity I don't think could not have existed on Google's infrastructure, and it's really great that we have an alternative.
Yeah, exactly. I love people being able to think outside the box. Kind of no pun intended there. Here's an example of Map of the Dead. So it looks like a game where they may, maybe they are using actual street maps, but we talk about things that may not even fall on the Earth map. Like Mars and other great things. So I think that as we move forward, people are just going to think of more and more great ways to use the map that aren't where's the nearest pizza shop. That when you pull out your phone, these different applications or web apps or companies are creating really unique experiences. Down here, I think that we talked about the National Geographic launching city guides, and so there's some really neat custom non-traditional uses for these maps that we are really excited to see continue to flourish and hopefully expand into more areas.
So if you have any ideas of building the zombie apocalypse, or if you want to do something really bizarre, or if you want to do something if you're a hunter and you want to go fishing and stuff, and so we talked about those use cases. We talked about how to download, that they offered a way of caching these maps. So if you don't have an internet connection, you can still use these maps. Obviously, mapping is a huge part of mobile computing. Mapping is a huge part of location-based computing that we're all moving quickly towards. And this is a company to watch. I firmly believe these guys are going to do very well. So I'm really glad we got them on. And Jeff, if you have anything else to add?
No, it was really a pleasure to have such a great product on the show, as I'm such a huge fan of just really useful products.
Yep.
Not to mention open source, and they're making money. It's just a dream come true.
I don't know if Jeff got this, but we didn't really talk about sales and marketing that much. And you know why? It's because it's open source. Open source, it
sells itself. The GitHub page.
It sells itself. They probably didn't even. I mean, they were part of development seed, and they spun off of that because they were probably getting all these requests from companies asking them if they can support the maps, if they can support the technologies that they were open sourcing. And there's the business model. There's no marketing expense. There's probably very little sales. They probably have a lot of customer service and all that kind of thing. But in terms of just this outbound, it's all inbound. All of this stuff is all inbound, so it's really great. That's one thing.
We should also mention they have a great blog that you guys should also check out. We'll make sure to put a link in the notes to that. But they are really authentic. They are. It sounds like the team is all contributing to the blog, and really an awesome company culture that we also chat a little bit about.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a wonderful example of the modern company, distributed, doing open source, servicing inbound leads. It's really great for many reasons. So if you want to start a tech company, watch this interview. There's going to be a lot of great stuff here. To that, we do this Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please tune in. We actually had several people tune in today, and we want your comments and feedback. We got a lovely email today, and it just made my week. It made my month. Hell, I think it made my year. So, Jeff?
Yeah, that was pretty good. We might have to bring that up on the show. We really do want to engage with our audience, so we probably will be, reading that email on the show at some point, or at least reaching out to you through the show, and we need to hear more from you. So you can always email us, info@smokinghotcoffee.com. You can get to smokinghotcoffee.com and find all of the channels that we're on through our subscribe button, which are Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and the rest of them. So please leave us a message, and we'll keep doing this.
Okay, great. And so with that, let's cut to the interview.
So my first background was in systems administration. I used to work in the web hosting industry about 15 years ago for quite a while. Then I kind of moved over into development, did some web development. I started doing freelancing on my own 6 or 7 years ago, and mostly in Mac stuff, and that had segued nicely into the rise of the iPhone. And then I've been with Mapbox for about 3 years since then, largely on iOS-related stuff.
Okay. So we talked briefly about your Gmail code sorcery. I love that name, man. Tell us some more about this workshop.
Yeah, that was just my my freelancing shop, Code Sorcery Workshop. It's just a one-person operation, doing all manner of consulting. Everything from the code monkey to the janitor kind of thing. So yeah, it was a fun name. I had some fun with it.
That's great.
Sounds like a blast.
Jeff and I completely agree. We are the sorcerers of our age.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
You know, but hopefully we'll start getting into hardware, not just the software. We'll really, conjure up new devices as well at some point, maybe even.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, you've got things like Arduino and all this home hacking, Raspberry Pi, a lot of neat things.
That's right. That's right.
Similar type of stuff.
All right, cool. So let's get into Mapbox. Tell us about Mapbox, your role in Mapbox, and why.
Yeah, so we are a small bootstrapped operation. We're in Washington, D.C. largely. We're about 35 folks. Okay. I'm there actually now this week. I'm normally out in Portland, Oregon, one of the remote guys. Okay. We've got folks on 3 continents actually. So, but we're all here this week for a bit of a code sprint. We have been around for about 3 years in the mapping front. Before that, bootstrapped out of largely a consulting firm for development work in Washington, D.C., international development work. And so that kind of segued into how we got into maps. We started doing a lot of things with visualizations of data. Okay. And being international, as you'd imagine, it started to have a big geographic component to it. And we started looking at the tools that were out there and said, you know what, we can do better. We need better, more open tools. And we started writing them, and it turns out other people liked them as well. So here we are.
Okay, when you say we need better, and then you said open, do you feel Google's Maps API is not open enough?
Well, so there's a bit of a difference. We base everything that we do on, number one, on top of open data. So we use and contribute largely to OpenStreetMap. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically the Wikipedia of maps. Okay. It's over 1 million people contributing to that. And that's so awesome. Rather than build up a store of our own data, we contribute to and help facilitate that community. And so that's our data. On top of that, pretty much every bit of code, anything that's useful to somebody else that isn't a one-off, we open source. We don't sell code or intellectual property around software. Okay. We sell a service. And so all the code we're doing is open source, and all the data we're doing is open data. And so that's what we mean when we say open.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, I'm a little confused. So let's say I've got an idea that's going to require some mapping. I don't want to have the rug pulled out from under me if Google decides to incorporate my features. Could I use a service like you guys and be sure that you guys aren't? Who owns that? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right. So OpenStreetMap itself is owned under a license. It's owned by the contributors to the community, much like a lot of open source code is. Okay. What we put on top of that is a lot of customization around the use of that data set. So OpenStreetMap is 2 things. It's a map. It's a visual, kind of what you think of when you think of like a Google Maps, but it's also the data. And that's what we really operate with, is the data doing all kinds of things. You can do everything from geocoding to directions and routing with that, to actually putting it on a visible map. Okay. And so the data, when we release out any maps that are made with that data, they are also under that same sort of license, the map tiles. So these are things you can kind of take with you. Okay. So you don't, you're not really limited in the sense of, like you said, if we pull the rug out, or somebody pulls the rug out from underneath you. Okay. I actually have a very good friend of mine who is the founder of a LA-based startup called City Sourced. I'm not sure if you've heard of them or not, but they do this thing where it's like, if a citizen wants to report a pothole or some eyesore or some other issue, they pull in mapping data from ESRI, which you may have heard of. They're a big outfit here in the Redlands in Southern California, and they do a lot of mapping using their data set. And I remember asking Jason, who's the founder, why, and turns out they have a investment deal with them, and so it turned out to be a good match for both. But then I started thinking about why not Google's API, and I keep reminded that you never know. Google may add a feature, and bam, next thing you know, you've been disintermediated. Is that would that something like that happen with you guys if I was to work with you guys? Well, what we provide as a service, I mean, to my knowledge, if I'm understanding your question right, not really, no. I mentioned, we work with this open data and we contribute to the open data, and the code that we put out is open source. So it's, we support it, but you can do kind of whatever you want with it. And I should add also that it's a BSD, it's usually BSD or MIT license, meaning you can take the code and make a closed, so you can use it in a closed iOS app or whatever. So, it's not that viral kind of GPL license. Okay. But what we provide as a business is expertise around allowing you to make beautiful maps or make use of ours or other people's beautiful maps, and then hosting those at scale.
Okay.
So the thing that we're actually providing is cloud infrastructure around, if you want to have a map embed in your website, and then your website is on the front page of New York Times, or you are the New York Times, I should add that they've used our maps as well.
Okay.
You can hold up to that traffic, or you get an app that's getting, 100 million downloads the first day because it was showed off in the keynote. Right. You can support that sort of traffic.
Okay, so let's talk about a use case. So let's say I do have a cool idea for a location-based thing that I need in my iOS app. Why would I want to go with a Mapbox versus a Google API? What's a great reason to do that?
You have complete control over the look of it. As far as color, as far as texture, as far as the density of data involved. So we find, particularly in iOS, I should add that the largest portion of what we do is with website, people doing web technology. Mm-hmm. My specialty is in the iOS side of things. And particularly with iOS developers, we tend to have a kind of a real critical eye towards the visual aesthetic component of things.
Yeah.
And so we've had folks come to us and say, we couldn't have done the app. We couldn't have made the app that we saw in our head without the power that Mapbox gave us over the look of the map. Right. And whether that's color or custom iconography that you're bringing in, or just simple things like not having roads on a map, or not having water on a map, or having all of your labels in Cantonese or Arabic, or things like that. We really allow that fine level of control to bring that in. And on top of that, we allow full offline use on iOS. So that's been a big important factor for
that's
that's huge.
Huge feature. So some of these things are big differentiators from Google, right?
Definitely.
And I think, Amul, from my developer end, some of what I've seen people being hesitant to use the Google APIs is, I think it was the big version 2 that they released, and there were some changes, right, to the license agreement, I think, or the rates and the limits, and so they've sort of limited even what you're allowed to use, and you kind of hit these walls, and I could see you hit these limitations right away.
Right.
That was actually a kind of a happy turning point for us. Going into 2012, things got really interesting because
Can you tell us real quick what those changes were?
After a number of years, Google basically said to their top tier customers, "Oh, hey, by the way, we're going to start charging you some serious money for these maps that you've been embedding for the last 5 or 6 years." And so folks were finding themselves faced literally with a 6-figure monthly bill that came out of nowhere, to keep the maps going on their website. And so pretty much everybody said, okay, well, if I'm going to put that kind of money out, I'm going to do my due diligence and figure out what else is out there. And
very cool.
That really, that gave us a big boost going into 2012. And as it turns out, a little bit down the road, Google dropped their price pretty severely and matched us exactly. I don't know where they got the number from.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So at that point, then we had to kind of shift gears and think about, well, what else is important to people? And all along, we've been focused on this beauty and clarity and control and flexibility over what you can do with the maps, and that remains our biggest differentiator.
Very cool. Yeah. I have to tell you, man, before we got on, Jeff and I were brainstorming about what are we going to write on this tweet, and I was like, Jeff, think Titans, think like these guys are going to battle, think like Gladiator, and what you just said totally encapsulate this battle. I mean, you guys are dealing with a multi-billion-dollar company with all the resources to squash you guys. And
it's not just Google either. I mean, honestly, we are going against to a certain extent Apple, Google, ESRI, Microsoft, Bing. Yeah. I mean, they're slightly larger companies than we are. We're this bootstrapped operation. Yeah, we're this.
I love that slightly larger.
Yeah. The only way we're going to be able to pull this kind of thing off, I mean, our differentiator is this open nature of it, where we are critically focused on the data so that everybody can share from this. I mean, so here's a concrete example. Okay. If you see a mistake on Google Maps or Apple's Maps and you report it or change it or add a building or whatever, it might show up in a month, it might show up in 6 months, it might never show up, you might be waiting. We turn around every moderated change in OpenStreetMap within 5 minutes to all of our maps worldwide on the cloud.
Oh, wow. How do you determine moderated change? Is that several people agreeing? Is that how do you guys do that?
That's a large part. That's a benefit we get from the OpenStreetMap community. So it's this, I mentioned they've got 1 million users. They've got the moderation in place so that you don't have somebody come in, create a new account, and quickly deface a bunch of things and get those approved. So there's these thresholds involved that keep things sane, and they're working. The map is staying together and working really well. So I mean we've got to that's our kind of hook into things, is we've got to think about things in that way if we're going to compete.
Yeah. So how many
we love open. I mean, I think open just really is a huge game changer that makes it possible for you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and I mean it is the life breath of our company, and both in code and data. So we're serious about it.
Oh no, it's great. I mean, I'm a longtime open source fan, right? I used it to educate myself in the industry. I'm a PHP LAMP kind of stack guy, Linux.
That's where I came from too. Yeah.
And I love the polish and chrome of the Mac over here, but I've got my Ubuntu server running next to me. How do you look at the open source street maps? The data collection is just tremendous. It's obviously going to be better, more accurate than the Google Maps even, and then we got Apple Maps probably on the side as well. How does Waze and the recent news with them kind of connect with that theme? The importance of getting like social data collection. Are people missing the boat that OpenStreetMaps is doing the same thing, or what's the difference there?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen with Waze, but I mean, I saw it as a certain amount of protection against, they were this last stronghold of private data that they had built up at a large scale, and now they've been absorbed into another one of the really big guys, and so it's almost like the writing's on the wall. If you're going to build up a proprietary set of data like that, there's you know where you're going to be headed with it. So
they had a huge $1 billion exit though, man. Those guys are probably so like, yes,
you can't complain about that. I'm sure.
Come on, man, lots of money. $1 billion is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean I think it's good because I mean it's still better maps and better technology for everybody. It's as far as we know, it's not going to go away, and so there's room for everybody in the space. It's like you get that constant winner loser, it's down to 2 and then down to 1 kind of thing, and it doesn't have to be that way. I mean Apple even pulls data from OpenStreetMap themselves. They've sourced that. They started doing that about a little over a year and a half ago with iPhoto on iOS. They sourced it back on some tiles, and then when they ditched Google last summer, if you peel up a little corner of your Maps app on your iPhone, it says copyright OpenStreetMap as well as one of their sources. I think their big problem came in integrating lots of different sources and keeping that keeping that straight. But they're on board with it too, not across the exclusively. And we do pull in other sources as well to make the cartography that we make about OpenStreetMap smarter, and kind of normalize things and bring in some other data, but that's 99% of our data right there. So and it belongs to everybody. So like I said, with the editing, everybody benefits from that. We've seen some contributions back. One of our favorite clients is Foursquare, and they've been able to help contribute data back in areas around the world, particularly in places like Brazil, and just help grow via their active communities.
And really give the eyes on the land, literally.
You see the signups go through the roof when clients like that get involved, because people are like, oh, there's a problem with the map. Well, go fix it, and people do. It's really cool.
That's really cool,
and everybody benefits, us included. So
that's
tremendous. I'm really glad that Waze is maybe at least starting that conversation for people to realize how valuable the open source crowdsourcing the data can be.
Oh, that was huge, man. That thing, it took off like a rocket. It's really great. So really briefly, Justin, earlier when Jeff and I started doing this, it was just me and him reviewing startups, and one of the startups we reviewed had the map was the whole site, and they had a modal box on top saying, sorry, we had to shut down, Craigslist stopped providing us with their data, and so we can't we can't map the apartments that you might be looking onto on our site. And what is your thoughts about the big guys shutting the little guys out from their location data? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics of that. I remember when that happened. It was an app specifically. I mean, the things that Craigslist use maps around is real estate.
Yeah.
And I mean, it struck me as it's kind of it's not great to see.
Craig seems like a really nice guy in all of his interviews. He seems like a cool dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure why it had to be, our way or the highway kind of thing, because they actually use a lot of the open source code we put out to make their own maps now, and they self-host.
Oh, is that right?
Because they're just dealing with some insane volume. I was at a conference in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, the OpenStreetMap annual U.S. conference. Okay. And they had talked a bit about their map solution and what they were working on, and I mean, the conference is all about OpenStreetMap, and they were the top sponsor of the conference.
That's cool.
So they talked about the crazy billions of page views they do every hour, and it was unbelievable. So so they had to come up with their own solution to that's an insane amount of money to be thrown out the door when you have a tech staff on hand.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it had to be, why they had to shut down the other guys too.
Yeah, man, I was like, the little guy got shut down by Craig. Craig seems like such
I know. You get this warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, I'm like, Craig's cool, man.
So let me put on my developer point of view, actually, go back to that time frame. Same thing with the Google Maps, right? I think Google was really trying to get everyone to use their cool map technology. It was kind of early on in like the Web 2.0. JavaScript was finally getting really good, and they had a killer product, and they wanted people to mash it up. Right? And so there were all these hot mashups happening that hackers were throwing together in a few hours or a day or two. And I think that's when, some of them turned into businesses. We're like, oh, cool, this is like actually useful. Yeah. And then they got the big bill when Google turned on version 2.0 or whatever. And they really got burnt by it. But same thing with Craig almost. It's like, a lot of people were kind of mashing up these like really useful tools that Craigslist was not offering. They didn't have a damn map view, And so it took them so dang long to get there. And I was actually using it the other day, and it's crap. It still doesn't even really seem to do what I need. But
tell it how it is.
I don't know why he's been shoving people out, since the beginning.
Yeah.
And, some people he lets play and lets them slip through, and then he finally sends them the notice or whatever.
So the only thing that comes into my mind is that fraud and abuse and stuff like that, because of the nature of commerce around Craigslist, that attracts that kind of thing, and maybe they just had to clamp down on some things that were really problematic for them, and they were liable for. That's the only thing I think of that's a really big liability for them.
That's a good point. I was thinking, I was speculating with Jeff during the show. I was like, Jeff, do you think this little guy is making thousands of dollars a day, and Craig's worried about losing revenue? I mean, is it a money issue? Are they siphoning off all this data? I mean, are they hitting their servers that hard? And I just couldn't think that they were. But maybe you're right. Maybe they were getting some complaints. Maybe people were annoyed. Who knows?
Yeah,
it's hard to know. But it was sad to see that. I was like, oh, that sucks. Yeah. But anyways, hopefully when you guys become huge and stuff, you don't do that to the little guy.
No, well, number one, we don't have any plans on getting huge. I mean, growth is good, but we've got a steady pace. I don't know. We take kind of a different tack to things, and we're just cranking out every day, trying to crank out great stuff, and we've had a lot of great press lately. I've been really fortunate.
Well, tell us how long has the company been around? I mean, she said it was like in the 30-ish head count. Like, tell us about the history, how long you've been there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the company itself, Mapbox's parent company is called Development Seed. Okay. And that company's been around since, I believe, 2003.
Yeah, which has a beautiful site. Oh, I've loved all the Development Seed UX. Oh, it's so nice.
Yeah.
Whoever the designer is so nice. This guy is,
Yeah, we have a couple designers here, and they're fantastic. I mean, same for the Mapbox.com site. It's
really well designed. Yeah,
It's awesome. I love the kind of personality of it too.
Yeah. So all right, so Development Seed has been around. I think we're the nonprofit space. Am I wrong here?
Yeah, the international development space.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of work, and visualizations were becoming more and more geo-focused. Right. And so Mapbox started as this suite of open source tools on GitHub. Okay. We just started putting some code up there, and then before we knew it, we had a business model around it, and then other people were like, "How can we pay you and use these kinds of things?"
That is so badass, man.
Yeah, and now we have, it's like this complete. Somebody in the office the other day brought up this analogy. So we have over 100 public repositories on GitHub of code. This is core code, that runs our business.
Right.
And 2 weeks ago, GitHub became a customer, because now when you have any GeoJSON data in a repository on GitHub and you go to look at it, it's visualized inline on a Mapbox map.
Oh, very cool.
And they've been blogging about this. So somebody at the office brought up.
This is really cool. We got to see this. Is there a link?
Yeah,
maybe?
if you go to GitHub's blog, they wrote it up.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah, might as well.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they called it "There's a Map for That," so which I think has been used before, but still, I can't complain. Somebody in the office said it's like when you make a T-shirt for your favorite band and then they wear it at a concert. We were just like, we do also everything on GitHub, internal and the open source code we put out. So it was just awesome to see them do this and extend this out to their customers.
Well, as we know, GitHub is rolling in the cash right now, man.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow.
These guys are hot. I mean, everyone, the whole open source community is really centered around there to share their code. Can you tell us any more about the business model? I mean, I was telling earlier about, I'm a profuse open source developer, and anyone that can actually create a business model around it is just a hero. It's like people are just trying to figure out how on earth that's possible.
But
and,
Jeff,
we start off the conversation, I think the data's open and the source is open. So, where does that leave you guys?
But Jeff, my guess is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, this was a whole accident. You guys are just throwing this stuff up on GitHub, and all of a sudden, wait a second, we got a business here.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, we've always been a fan of, even in the development seed days, of eating your own dog food. I mean, all the tools we use. Like, to give you an example, we put out probably our most popular repo on GitHub is called TileMill, and that's an application that we also ship as a binary you could just download and run. Okay. And that's a design studio for designing maps and taking any kind of data you bring in.
Oh, cool.
That's what we use to design our worldwide map that covers the entire world all the way down to, like, your block.
Oh, wow.
And so, if we're hitting pain points in that app, then we fix them, and everybody who's using the open source product benefits from that. And so, back to your question about the business, the data's open and it's not ours. The code is open and it's out there in BSD or MIT, so you can take it and do what you want with it. The core thing that we focus on as the business and charge for is that scale cloud hosting of maps. So you can get into the free level, sign up for a free account, and just play around with maps and see what you want to do. But we scale all the way up to folks like GitHub and Foursquare and USA Today and iOS apps and other mobile apps that use this stuff, and we've just got a whole range in between.
So really briefly, Justin, I want to go back to this accidental discovery. So you guys are throwing up the stuff on GitHub. Who came up with this? Like, hey, wait a second, man. There's all these people like forking this, and like, wait a minute, man. They're trying to like use this in their company, man. Did somebody start reaching out to you guys and say, hey, can you guys do this? How did that happen? What did the services where did somebody realize, we got to spin this off? We got to development seed, and this is not, what happened? Like, were you part of that conversation?
A little bit. It was kind of happening at the same time I was coming on board the team. I joined full-time about 2 years ago, and I was doing freelancing before that to see if you could bring custom maps to an iPad right after the iPad came out. So that was my early involvement with things. But really, it came down to, we started with this model of, here's some great tools. We're going to open source it because we're using it for our website clients or whatever.
Right.
And then it turned into, okay, here's a way to put your maps online, and we'll host them for you so you can have a point of reference to send people to. Right. And then it became, okay, now you can share and layer those maps over other users' maps. And so somebody could have a transparent overlay, and you lay that over this gorgeous terrain-based layer that you made, and that sort of thing. Right. And then we realized, okay, we've got to make this a little more reliable, and so we started exploring, cloud infrastructure, largely on Amazon. Right. And now we have, we've got worldwide reach and all these edge servers and everything running, so it's cached really fast at the edges, so that the maps are super fast and websites are fast, and they can handle things at scale. So we did a lot of mapping around Hurricane Sandy, and we just knew, or Superstorm Sandy, I guess it is. Right. We just knew that U.S. East region was going to have some issues as that storm was coming in, and so we were able to respond and flex that over to the West Coast and Europe and things like that.
So let me get this straight. So you guys through this enabling technology, enabling code on GitHub, it starts getting forked, and then it just naturally the opportunities start bubbling up. So
yeah, really.
So really, so the lesson here that could be learned, maybe possibly, if you're an open source developer, is to if you're having thoughts of sharing, don't have those thoughts. Just share share as much as possible. Would you say that's?
Yeah, I mean, as much as you're able. I mean, there really can be two roads about it, because your code might be your intellectual property, and then it makes it really difficult to say, oh, we're going to give this away. There's a couple different models you can go at with that, but our experience has always been that we want to provide a robust service around things, and the code we're doing, we see it as a problem in the community that these things are being siloed, whether it's the data store or the libraries, and you can't fix the bugs, or you can't fix the missing building or the mislabeled road. Right. And that's what we really want to enable, because we win and everybody wins, and it doesn't have to be, like I was saying, we win, you lose thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, because I can imagine just the customization layer that you offer. Like if you get in a corporate thing or a company and you're a product manager trying to decide what features to add and how many options, every customer is saying, oh, I want this option, I want this option. With open source, you just go build it, just go add it, and we'll incorporate it. And it kind of gets rid of that like cost of like trying to make those decisions all the time, where you can go ahead and focus on the infrastructure and the real pain points for people, while they can introduce all the features and bells and whistles they want. I mean, because Google's not going to offer these features ever, are they?
Yeah, I mean, it probably not. These are just things we're passionate about, particularly around the flexibility, interoperability, and making it look good, really good. Right. I mean, we spent a lot of time. So we assembled over the spring a bunch of public data from various state agriculture departments and NASA and things like that, and made a worldwide satellite map, and we came up with this process for removing all the clouds from it. Wow. And we released that back in May, and it was really well covered, and it's super exciting because nobody was doing satellite imagery that just looked that pretty and crisp. I mean, it doesn't look the way the Earth really looks, because the Earth has always got clouds somewhere.
Right.
But it looks, every place looks like that at some point. And we assembled it all into one map, and nobody else is focusing on that kind of thing then. And it's just an area we saw that needed to be addressed.
Wow. Well, I want to segue into a couple of other topics that are near and dear to my heart. One is, I think I'm pretty rebellious at heart, and I don't like people telling me what to do, and I don't like people watching me. So this whole thing with the NSA, where do you guys fit in that whole puzzle? Is any of this stuff, obviously, it's being probably, they've got the big, cables underneath the Atlantic Ocean already tapped. So even if you guys wanted to protect us, you probably couldn't. But
well, yeah. So it's funny you ask. I mean, it's huge in the news, and we put out a transparency report. I think it was yesterday, either yesterday or Tuesday.
Wow.
Where we just came down on it and said we've had 0 requests, we've given out 0 info, and we will never give out your info unless required to do so by law.
Very cool.
We'll never do it voluntarily. And so we're tracking that.
I like that transparency. What do you call it? Transparency report.
Transparency report. Yeah.
I love that. Every tech company should do this now. I think this should be a regular thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Just like when you buy food and you look at the nutritional, like, is how much sugar? I want to see the transparency on this product, goddammit.
Yeah. It's ours is stupid simple. We just put it out there, and naturally we put it on a map so you can see all different countries' governments, how many requests they've made. They're all zeros right now, and we hope to keep it that way. But
I was even telling my wife the other day, I'd be willing to pay to sign up for a service that would literally connect to my router and connect to my phone somehow and literally scramble everything. Just because I know they're tracking. I know you guys are trying to do the right thing, but they're tracking it, man. They've got this shit tapped somewhere down in the ocean. So even if you guys are transparent, somebody isn't.
Yeah, the trick is, all the in-between points, if you're not using encryption, and then these massive stores of data, which is what the NSA and groups really want, is they just want, let me see your hard drives, because you've got petabytes or whatever of data on there.
Yeah.
And so we really wanted to come down on the side of, we don't want to give anything out. Yeah. And we're going to report everything that does happen. And so, that's where the idea of the report.
Do you think when Google says that they're trying to be as transparent as possible, do you think they're really trying, or do you think it's just a PR stunt to try to make people feel okay with using Gmail and GDocs and every search and everything else that they do to track us?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to get my head around companies of that size, just personally. Yeah. Mapbox is actually the largest place I've ever worked. I've only ever worked for startups for 15 years. Okay. And, so, I mean, I can think a little larger than that, but the size of that, how many, one hand talking to the other, it's hard to,
you're right. It's a good point. A lot of departments, thousands of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Okay, let me ask a related question, sort of. So let's say on Google Maps, like I'm scrolling around the map and looking around, I have to download every tile from the server, right? And so they could theoretically be looking at like, oh, Jeff is, planning a trip some country because he's downloading all these tiles or something. Part of one of your features is offline, right? Can you tell us? I mean, just unrelated to the security conversation, but I think that's a great feature, just to not have to access the server all the time. Because mapping, we really take it for granted. I think these maps really blessed us on our iPhones when we're like on the go and we can pinch and click around and find out not get lost in LA. But what happens without an internet connection or in those sorts of are there some really great use cases for the offline mapping?
Yeah, it comes down to kind of two halves. There's the technical half of it, like doing that and making the tech work. And some people are interested, some companies are interested in doing it, some aren't, some have implemented, some haven't. But the other side of that is the policy. It's allowing you to download and keep that kind of thing cached. And we came out with our policy, I want to say it was, I don't know, maybe June or July of last year, where we said, you know what, we're just going to make this unlimited. We're going to simplify it so that if you pull data down, you're not allowed to proxy our content from our servers. But once you've got it from our servers, you can store that and keep it around as long as you want. And so we've left that up to the developers. And so back to the code side, that's something I've implemented, say, in our iOS SDK, so that you can say, never remove this, or only when I click the button, or only on a monthly basis, or only the next time I'm online, and give the developer that flexibility. Okay. And so we've had some neat apps come out around that. Do you guys know Bass Pro Shops? I mean, totally outside the tech world, but they do outfitting for like fishing and hunting and stuff.
Okay, yeah, pull that up. I want to see what this is.
Yeah, they're in our showcase actually. If you go to Mapbox, if you check it out, there's a very foresty colored image. Okay, go down a bit, you'll see it.
There it wow.
Is. Yeah,
that's cool.
So they have this app oriented towards hunters and fishers, anglers, fishermen, right. And that you could just say, give me this lake or this park or this area or my backyard or whatever, this rectangle, all the way down. Click progress bar. You're done.
Bang! You've got your map on your phone. You don't need to connect. Right. Great. You
hit the woods, and in that kind of scenario, maybe you can't, but you could use this for equally, traveling overseas. You don't want to pay for a data sim, or you just don't, like you said, you don't want to use the data, or you don't want the tracking.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I love that you guys offer that, because it's occurred, I'm a developer, so maybe that kind of stuff goes through my brain. But even just traveling, across town or something, it'd be kind of nice to cache all those tiles, so I don't have to, while I'm on Wi-Fi before I leave for the trip or something.
Yeah. It came out of personally, it came out of the frustration with using Apple Maps on my phone, where the map would sometimes be there. I'm in a tunnel or whatever, or in the train underground. I would look at it, and the map would be there, and you'd be scrolling around, and maybe it would try to refresh. The web pages do the same thing, and you'd be like, no, not now, because there's no internet connection,
right?
And it can't. And then it's like, oh, I have nothing.
Right.
All in a developer's hands. So I mean, we really try to be proactive and thinking about, and we are developers. I mean, it's like 98% of us are engineers, and so we just want, what we want to see if we were building an app with this technology, and that's where we try to go with it.
Right. Awesome. So tell us, Google Maps has got an awesome feature, the whole Street View. Are you guys even going to get into that territory? If you guys are you guys thinking about crowdsourcing that as a way of bootstrapping it, or?
It's not really high on the list as of yet. I mean, that's really difficult to do outside of that top-down infrastructure, I think. I mean, Google's obviously got cars all over the place, and drones and whatever.
Autonomous cars. Yeah.
I think there have been some movements in the community for bubbling that up, crowdsourcing in a similar way to where how OpenStreetMap works. Yeah. Honestly, it's not too high on our list just yet.
Okay.
We've really been focused on kind of the cartography and visual presentation of data, whether that's contact information for your company on your contact page, or you're doing kind of more broad scale things like some of the news media customers we have, where we're trying to help people understand this data in a geographic frame of reference. That's really kind of where we're focused right now. Mm-hmm. That said, we are working on some features coming very soon around geocoding, so turning an address into a coordinate and a coordinate into an address, and routing and directions, which is huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
Again, open source code and leveraging open data. So that's our way. Others may have it, but we're going to do it in an open way.
That's amazing. That's traditionally an incredible challenge on all platforms. Like when the iPhone didn't have turn-by-turn directions, they were directing people to go buy a $50 Garmin app or whatever.
Right, yeah.
How are you guys doing this with such a small head count, man? I mean, you guys going to license the technology from Garmin? How you guys... I'm curious.
Yeah, we don't really license. We where we can, we use open data, and we've got we just put the pedal to the metal, and we have a really kind of flat organizational structure where we just I justify what I work on based on presenting it to my coworkers, and I'm like, here's the direction I think we need to go on iOS or mobile, and it's just we just let people run with it, empower folks to really go to town with it. That said, on the routing department, we have a guy on our team who just finished his PhD in routing algorithms, so that'll help.
That helps.
Yeah.
That helps. Well, so tell me more about Mapbox. Like, you mentioned that you're in Washington, Seattle. Where exactly are you right?
So I'm right now at the home office in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So Washington, okay.
Yeah, we've got most of the company here. I'd say 25 or so are here in D.C. Okay. We're basically all here this week. We're getting together for a company-wide. We're going to town on some of these things we're working on down the pipe. Okay. But normally I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I've got another coworker there. We've got somebody up near Seattle. We've got San Francisco. Okay. Down in Peru. A couple folks in Germany. Guy in England.
I love that.
Yeah. Spread out a little bit, so we work well as a distributed team too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen in working distributedly, and tell us more about that, the lifestyle.
Yeah, so a lot of it is, we really heavily leverage technology to help with that. We're not doing a lot of phone calls and video chats and things like that. Okay. Back in more of the development seed days, we actually again didn't like the software we saw out there, so we built our own solution. Kind of a Basecamp solution that we use to communicate and sign tickets for each other.
Oh, really? So you built your own sort of project management thing, similar to Basecamp, similar.
Yeah. And since then, we've moved largely to GitHub. So we have those 100 and some repos publicly of code, but we also have a lot of internal repos ranging from everything, everything to business strategy, sales leads.
That is so
down to
cool. Wait, so you're using GitHub for the CRM almost?
Yeah. You should see some of the tickets because we have like a repository around office stuff. So it's like, need more beer for the fridge. Or
I love this.
Toilet needs a new handle. And, things like that. We're pretty scrappy.
Dude, that's badass. Jeff, come on. You got to hand it to these guys. They're using GitHub to manage their company.
Yeah. No, that's the trick. When you get a bunch of developers, they know how to use these tools.
Yeah, it's got Markdown.
Glorified text editor, yeah.
Yeah, it's got Markdown. It's got an API. They've got a mobile client that they put out.
Wow.
It's easy to handle via email reply on tickets. I'm sitting on the airplane right before I have to shut the phone off. I can take care of some things and stuff like that. It works really well. We get a wide range of tickets.
What does a repo look like for like the internal company? What do you guys call it? Like lunch menu repo?
Yeah, it's like literally like office, business, sales, whatever, travel, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Have you ever heard of anyone else doing this?
Yeah, I don't think I have.
Not really, no. We just got the idea to do it. It's like our internal blog that we do company announcements on is called Hey, H-E-Y. So it's like, hey, read this. And I should add that GitHub really has a nice notification system, so you can tag individual people and they get notified, or teams. So when you organize into the satellite team or the data team or the iOS team or whatever, you could just tack that onto the end of the ticket. Those people get the notifications and they're watching the ticket. So it's neat. You get a wide variety of tickets, anything from like nitty gritty of routing algorithms on up to who's going to buy paper towels. So
The question is, were you able to teach the HR department how to use Git?
Yeah. Surprisingly, we've got a couple folks using the
developers.
We've got some folks using the GitHub's clients for that, but some people have busted out the command line too. So it goes all the way down. Yeah.
That is so cool. Nice. That is the first time I've ever heard of this. That is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really neat. So it's been, like I said, it's super cool to come full circle with that and have GitHub using our maps, because it's just like, awesome.
Right.
It's great, yeah.
So tell us your thoughts, and maybe even Mapbox's position on the future of the company and the future of mapping in general.
Yeah, so I think, obviously we're pretty invested in OpenStreetMap. I think that's the future of mapping. I'm not going to say the exclusive future, because like I said before, not everybody else has to lose. But I think increasingly, there's a lot of room for us to grow and still only be nibbling the heels of folks like Google and ESRI. So we just really want to lead in the thought space and come up with interesting things that other people aren't doing or aren't tackling or are satisfied with that we aren't satisfied with, and just constantly be reaching for some new way of making it look better or be more flexible.
Let's get into the nitty gritty here. These are some generalities. Give me a pain point or some future vision that the sorcerer has dreamt up while he's sleeping that he would love to see. Like, well, come on, give us some of this exciting.
Try to think of what I can talk about.
Okay, I can tell you. I can give you one of mine. How about that? Well, I'll start it off.
Okay.
So I've always thought, like, when I'm at the gym, when I go, which is like once a year, there's all these, like, the gym equipment spaced like 4 or 5 feet from each other. The weightlifting machines or whatever. And I always thought it'd be so cool to set up tracking, like some way of using mapping to map literally like indoor mapping, like 4 feet away, and I'm at the bench press, now I'm at the leg lifts, and almost like track how long I'm on the, within that building. Like, is that available now? And do you guys,
That's kind of the edge of things. Again, that's not something that's super high on our list, but there are some folks doing some interesting things there. The trick with that becomes, you move from GPS to something else.
Okay.
Because GPS
How small is GPS, and does it work indoors?
I mean, GPS is usually down to about the meter, and it does work indoors based on Wi-Fi and cell triangulation. Oh, wow. And then if you can, get a shot out the window to read with an actual satellite. Right. But I mean, you're starting to see some folks kind of realize this needs to go a step further. So you've got things like applications that will run on Wi-Fi routers, and so this is something that's going to be big in retail, where they can put Wi-Fi routers around the store so that people can figure out where they are. Or, I mean, Apple announced this at their keynote a couple weeks ago. They've got this idea of I think they call it an iBeacon. And it's this little Bluetooth device, and they've got full-on support for it in iOS 7. I think this is all in the public keynote, where you can put these around. You can have it on a bus, and so you can track when you're near the bus or things like that, or track the bus better and you could do it in a peer-to-peer way via everybody's iPhones on the bus.
Step back. I don't remember this piece in the keynote, but you're saying this is a separate device that is on the bus. Yeah,
it's a piece of hardware. It's a piece of hardware that it runs on Bluetooth, that communicates over Bluetooth. So the idea would be, say, in a retail situation, you put one of these at the head of each aisle. And then as people round the bend with their iPhones, they've got these whole APIs to figure out what beacons you're near and triangulating off the beacons and things like that. So it requires kind of a higher level of precision.
Yeah.
And again, we're not super focused currently on location as opposed to visualization and cartography of it. It's kind of two separate things. Obviously, like you talked about in the beginning, Emil, you said this is going to be a huge area.
Yeah.
And we realize it's important, but the location doesn't matter unless you can put it on a map. And so that's where we're putting our eggs in the basket right now.
Gotcha. No, I'd love to see.
How about a tangent? Are there any people mapping stuff on a non-Cartesian Earth stuff that's like made up, making a video game but using your mapping technology for the tile sets and stuff?
Yeah, I've seen 3 really interesting uses of that since you asked. One has been using doing a fantasy world and just putting that on our mapping technology. As long as it doesn't get too big or need to go, it can generally fit, and you don't care that it matches
on the world
geographic coordinates. Yeah. Another really cool use I saw was a resume. And somebody had built this kind of map of expertise, and then as you drilled into each area, it would go into a higher zoom level, and it would retile.
That
and
is
have
cool.
more levels of detail or screenshots or that sort of thing.
Wow.
And the third thing is something. Yeah, so the third thing is something one of my colleagues has been doing and mapping Mars, using a lot of the Mars imagery that's been coming back from the rover. Yeah. And so he's been able to put that. We have an open source framework /app in the App Store.
Oh wait, you got to pull that up. Does he have a web page? You can see some of this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's. It should be on our blog. I think in the last week or so. So I should add, we blog about every day, and it's not just fluff stuff. We are seriously hitting really good topics and things that we're working on. So that's a good insight into how our pace is moving. But if you scroll, I'm pretty sure there's an image of Mars on there.
Okay. Wow, I gotta see this. Yeah.
So we put out an app called Mapbox Earth, which is both an app on the App Store and an open source framework on GitHub. So if you want to do your own theming around it, but it's your spinning globe in 3D. And so Chris, my coworker, just put Mars imagery on it. It doesn't matter that it's a different size globe. It still fits around a sphere. So he had a Mapbox Mars, and you could zoom around and see Mars imagery. And
wow.
He in particular has been doing a lot of neat stuff with that. So yeah, our our technology is totally applicable to that sort of thing.
This is so great, man. We're gonna
That's
have
so
to.
great. I mean, we are such huge fans of open, and I think this is why. You know, it allows this sort of thing to happen. You know, because I'm guessing he's pulling the imagery from NASA or whatever, and you know, you just put two and two together, right?
Yeah.
Some neat response from them, actually, being interested in what we're doing, which again is like the GitHub thing. It's like, no way!
Right.
It's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, how amazing.
So have you, since we're talking about use cases, have you seen any really great commercial use cases in terms of like geofencing, like coupons or sponsors, or maybe music festivals using this, or I don't know, maybe that's probably a bad example, but some money making.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a big future area for monetization around personal location again. I'm trying to think personally of stuff that I've seen. There's an app in the Pacific Northwest that's kind of cool that I use. They put out a book first called Chinook Book. And it's like your standard annual book of coupons, and they partner with a lot of vendors and retailers who will give you a deal, and you go in with the coupon. So they've got a really neat interface around of letting you know it's like $5 cheaper than the book, so it's a neat way to have it with you all the time and not have to carry it around or have it in your car or whatever.
Right.
So that's been a neat use.
Anything else you can think of?
So you guys aren't doing too much in the way of like server-side triggering for geofencing or anything crazy like that. Yeah, that would be handled by the applications.
Right. Yeah, we're mostly focused on the visuals of maps, serving that at scale, bringing that down, and allowing you to bring that in. So, but we're not doing something like saying, here's the vendor we've partnered with. You can only put their location stuff on the maps. Again, we want to keep that wide open and just be. We want to be. It's like Legos. We want to be a building block and let you put neat things together.
Okay. I'm going to quickly segue into the distributed team bit again. I know you guys are using GitHub in this really cool way. What other tools have you found that really keeps the team together? I've talked to some entrepreneurs talk about like culture, and we try to get everybody all in the same building because I really value culture. Well, what about your culture? Does Mapbox have a good culture? What does it feel like?
Yeah, it's. I'm out in DC about every other month for a week, so we do get even the remote people together. I mean, again, it's like 75% 80% of the company is here in DC all the time, so it's not an issue as much as say someplace like GitHub, where I think they've got a core office, but they've got tons of people worldwide as well. So we do have 7 or 8 people spread over 3 continents. So the GitHub thing has been keeping us connected and being able to tag each other. Even when we're not in the same time zone, and just reply back. And, we don't put a lot of focus on business hours and overlap with each other when we're not in the same time zone. Right. But culture-wise, I mean, it's always great coming back to DC. I actually used to live here, so it's a little bit like coming home. Okay. But, we get together, and a big important part of our culture actually is foosball. We have 2 foosball tables downstairs. And so it's always interesting to come back and play foosball for the first time in 2 months against the guys who play every day. But
somebody needs to come up with a virtual foosball table so you can play this remotely.
Right. Yeah. So we actually play two'sball. It's a 2-on-2 with 2 balls, and you have to score both in the same goal to win, or else it's a split. Okay. So we had to crank it up a bit because the other one was too easy. So.
Wow, that's cool. So Jeff and I both work independently. He's in San Diego, I'm in LA. Can you tell us more about what is it like working, remotely? How do you deal with the isolation? How do you deal with not being in the office? Those kind of things.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to everybody who's on our team who's remote, but I've been working from home for 7 years, dating to when I was freelancing as well. I started when I lived here in DC and had been doing it in Portland as well. And for me, a big part of it was getting involved in the local, in my case, tech communities. Just local trade, for lack of a better word, communities. So I would go to things like being an iOS developer, go to our local Cocoa Heads and meetups around geo stuff. We have a PDX, Portland Open Source Geo group that I go to on a monthly basis, and things like that. So that was a nice way for me to be able to balance I work well alone,
right?
Kind of in quiet, or I go to coffee shops a lot for a little bit of white background noise. But coming back to DC is a big part of it, and then just tapping into my local community and just seeing what people are up to and meeting other colleagues.
What is the Portland community like? I mean, have you been seeing a lot of co-working spaces brought up like it is here in LA? What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, there's a really strong startup / DIY community in Portland. Okay. So there are a number of co-working spaces. There are a lot of people, and maybe it's just because I'm specifically, I'm automatically see other people who are doing the same thing I'm doing, but it just seems like there's a lot of people who are 1 or 2 person operations, doing their own thing, working on. There's that point in the day where you switch from caffeine to alcohol, it's Portland, so yeah, we're into both in a big way, but. It's really cool. It's a really vibrant mobile community, so I feel particularly hooked in. And there's not a lot of competition actually. It's a lot of, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I know some of the folks from ESRI. They go back to before they worked for ESRI in the community, and we're good friends, and we could just share what we're working on and productivity tips and things like that.
That's great. So it's not a net sum zero game. I think that's the term they use.
Right?
It's room for all.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. That's cool. I've been wanting to visit Portland ever since I started watching Portlandia. I love that show. I love that show. If anybody is watching this episode, please turn it off and watch Portlandia. It is awesome.
It hits surprisingly close to home.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah. Portland's cool. It's cool. I mean, I'm an East Coaster originally, but I've been in Portland for 5 years now, and it's my people. I really like it.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love that show, man. I love that. Have you seen the episode where they're just stuck at home watching the DVD? What is it? That sci-fi show movie.
I've only seen the first season, so I don't recognize it off the first season.
Okay, yeah, they get stuck for like 3 days, and it reminds me that's happened to me. So. Anyways,
I want to ask you a question. Back to design, real quick. Mapbox is so beautiful, and if you can bring in anything about the iOS, and particularly close to your heart, iOS is so beautiful, and the design is so important. How did you guys react as a virtual team listening to like the new iOS announcements or the new Google I/O stuff? They had a lot of map announcements. How is it for you guys being virtual? Were you all kind of like in a chat room hanging out watching it, or do you react to it, or do you all have a group team huddle, or do you let it roll off your back?
So on the mobile side of things, I'm largely leading that effort, and on iOS, that's pretty much me. And I was actually in San Francisco for WWDC. I go to WWDC. Actually, didn't get a ticket this year. There was a bit of a, I'm sure you heard of the snafu around that. Yeah. But I was in San Francisco for the week, and so I always watch the keynote live or the live stream of it. And I'm always just super excited. Even last year when they came out, it was a lot of rumor around them ditching Google and bringing their own maps up, and as it turns out, that was their headline feature. Yeah. Perhaps they maybe shouldn't have hammered on it too hard, in the PR around it. But so it was just exciting because just like this year, they brought up maps again. They brought maps to the Mac. They've got the framework and an app now, and you can sync. You can say, look up the directions before you leave work, shoot them over to your iPhone, and hit the road. Right. So that's awesome because more people are talking about maps, and I think more people talk about maps, more people want to know what is possible as far as customization and making it, everybody sees something and they see something they want to change. And our goal is to let you be able to change that and then host it at the same kind of scale that somebody like Google or Apple provides to you.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I could totally see this as you guys are going to do great. This is not slowing down and no stretch of the matter. So what was the big snafu? I know there were tickets were sold out in 4 seconds or something. Was that it?
Yeah, it was about 90 seconds. I was seeing errors the whole time. I was there. They pre-announced the time for the first time ever. Oh. Last year, I think I got a ticket, and it was like 5 a.m. Pacific, which was another kind of like a bit of a dig, or 5 a.m. Yeah, it was super early, but I think it sold out in like 90 minutes last year, but this year was something like 80, 90 seconds, and it was 5,000 tickets at $1,600 a pop.
Wow.
So, yeah. But, a lot of people got screwed this year. I know a lot of folks who just went to San Francisco anyway, and I hung out with a lot of folks, and I actually found it a little more of a relief because I could just kind of chill out. And,
right.
I don't really have any place to be right now. Let's talk. Catch up. People come from all over the world, New Zealand and wherever else. So it was cool to be all in San Francisco.
What do you think? What do you think happened? Do you think they had a lot of bots hitting it? What do you think? Scalpers? No.
No, I think it's just straight demand. I mean, they also said this year 2/3 of the attendees of WWDC were first-time attendees.
Oh.
And I know folks who've been going for 18, 19,
right.
20
Die-hard
years.
Mac fans.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just they're catering to a new crowd, and I can understand that. They want to get more folks on board, and us folks have been I've been doing Cocoa development for 10 years now, and so us folks have been around a little longer. We've got to just find other ways to entertain ourselves, so we get together and do ad hoc on conferences or just whatever.
So a lot of those newcomers, do you think a lot of people are really anticipating like a new device? Google's got their glass heads-up display. Apple maybe with the watch or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think
iPhone.
I don't think Apple's ever going to give a device, like look under your chair kind of thing. But
right,
Google seems to always do that, and I tend to think a lot of the ticket frenzy around that is, I'm going to get a device that I can eBay later.
Right.
So or maybe use, maybe they'll use it too. So.
Right.
So are you guys at all looking ahead at the new devices, new formats, like what the map is going to look like in Google Glass?
Yeah, very good question.
Other devices?
Yeah. So personally, I haven't really checked out Google Glass too much yet. I'm still feeling my way around it, how I feel about it, on an emotional level even. Sure. So, I'm curious. I mean, Google has definitely doubled down on this idea of the map is going to change based on who's looking at it.
Right.
This is what they've come out with on their web framework as well, and on the mobile, where you look for a restaurant and other restaurants of the same sort or that you might like become more prominent, and the road to get there becomes more prominent. Things like that. Yeah. I don't know. That's not something we're really doing, and that I'm personally interested in, but it's a way to do it, and it seems like a very googly way to, it's not in a bad way. It's just like that's Google. They're playing to their strengths. So it's an interesting take on it. So I think that's going to be where they head with Glass and where they want to let people go. But I haven't checked out the SDK either to check it out, but their Android SDK lets you bring in your own map tiles as well and turn off Google's if you want. So they've got some flexibility there.
Oh, that's cool.
Unlike Apple. As of yet, has not let you come along and
wow. So they won't let you swap out their maps. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that may change, but it's for the time being.
Wow. How does your guys' usage? You're big on the iPhone. How is like tablet versus iPhone? Are a lot of people using the? I mean, the tablet's a big, beautiful device.
Yeah, that was where we focused first. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, my first work was about 3 years ago in trying to get, this is more for the development seed side of things, it was trying to get custom maps available offline on an iPad. We were actually doing some work in Afghanistan at the time, and it just didn't have the internet infrastructure. And so we wanted to know, could you bring in custom maps? So, okay, maybe you can't turn off Apple's maps, but could you get your own maps in there somehow? And that's became what I work on today, which is our iOS SDK, which is a complete rebuild of what Apple has done, but it's ours and it's on GitHub and it's open source.
Very
and
cool.
You can do whatever you want with it. So that's been my baby, and it's been really cool to have that be open source because I'm able to technically compete with that department at Apple and a large department at Google who have got more than one developer working on their SDK.
Right,
and we've got a high quality kit that a lot of people are putting into apps. So.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is so great.
One of my I absolutely love that. One of my questions, I guess, is there tablet growth, or are people still focused on the one hand iPhone?
Sorry, you cut out for a minute there at the end.
So
I think there is. I mean, sorry, I did kind of get away from the question.
I was just curious. I haven't seen too many tablets in real life recently. Like everyone's, mobile, and we talk about advertising going mobile and all this stuff.
Yeah. Even with the iPad,
like and then there's the iPad Mini. Like, are people using these, and are they using them for mapping, or are they just using them in the meeting room, to take notes and send an email?
Yeah, well, those aren't mutually exclusive. The first work we were doing was around meeting presentations of maps, and the iPad was a much better form factor for that sort of thing because you can get your hands on it.
Right.
Whereas your phone is, you're often one hand using your thumb, you're standing up on the bus or whatever, like that kind of thing. So I think they play to different audiences. There's room for both, but we're definitely seeing folks who are interested in both. Like we had an app actually that uses our SDK. They just put an update out today to bring it to the iPad. We tweeted about it in Mapbox earlier. It's called City Guides. National Geographic put together this awesome app where they focused on New York, Paris, Rome, and a fourth city, I don't remember. And they just have these offline capable guides that help you around the city and have kind of like a curated approach to it. And they started with the phone a couple of weeks ago, and they bumped it up to the iPad. So you're not going to walk around the city with your iPad the same way.
Right.
But when you're sitting back at the hotel room, you want to explore in a little more depth and look at the pictures and read the article.
Right. Wow.
So yeah.
Very cool. So you were gracious enough to come on. I don't want to take up too much of your time. How do we get a hold of you? What's a good general email if people want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can email me at just justin@mapbox.com.
Okay.
I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm Incanus77, INCANUS77.
Okay.
And I blog just like pretty much everybody else here does at the Mapbox blog, talking about what I'm working on a pretty regular basis.
Okay, great. So definitely, if you want to get in touch with you, that's several avenues. Is there anything specifically that you guys do you want to tell our audience that you're looking for? Any, like, are you hiring, or if there's anything else that you might need?
We're always interested in people doing cool things. So I mean, if you've got, particularly if you're doing an open source, so it's a real easy way to send us your resume. Just point us to a GitHub URL.
That's right.
Yeah, and so that's how we've come in contact with most folks on the team. And so if you're doing something interesting on any mobile platform, anything with the web, you want to hack our stuff together, show us what you can do. Whenever we put out a formal job application, we always have a bonus point. Build a map with our tools and send us that along with your resume.
Okay, well, what if this person is not a coder? Are you guys looking for any marketing biz dev people or HR or any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, more on the design front, so more like directly applicable to the code and the services that we put out. Okay. Feel free to tweet us. The company's pretty active on Twitter as well, and let us know what you're up to, or if somebody's interested. And send me an email. I'll get it to the right people.
Awesome, very cool, very cool. Well, Justin.
We'll point our audience to your blog. You guys got a lot of great stuff there. Cool. We're huge fans of great content.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So it's been really great talking to you. You guys are a shining example of open source, actually business model with an open source foundation. It's great. It's really great.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on.
It's pretty cool to be able to work on open source code all day. So.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. How nice to just be able to push to GitHub, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Not have to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it's really it's rare. It's rare, so it's really great.
Breath of fresh air. We really appreciate your time and everything we discussed with our audience. Hopefully we'll get some brainstorm and ideas of how they might mash up your maps for their next app.
Yeah, cool.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Justin. We'll be in touch in a few months. Hopefully we'll find out what's going on with you, and maybe you'll come on again.
Yeah, great. I'd love to. Thanks. It's been fun.
All right. Thanks again, man.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.